Chevalier, as tu donnes au cochon à manger." Now it is clearly made out by the surviving evidence that D'Arc would much have preferred continuing to say, "Ma fille, as tu donnes au cochon à manger?" to saying, "Pucelle d'Orléans, as tu sauvé le fleur de lis?" There is an old English copy of verses which argues thus: "If the man that turnips cries, cry not when his father dies, then 'tis plain the man had rather have a turnip than his father." I cannot say that the logic of these verses was ever entirely to my satisfaction. I do not see my way through it as clearly as could be wished, but I see my way most clearly through D'Arc, and the result is that he would greatly have preferred not merely a turnip to his father, but the saving a pound or so of bacon, to saving the oriflamme of France. It is probable, as M. Michelet suggests, that the title of Virgin, or Pucelle, had in itself, and apart from the miraculous stones about her, a secret power over the rude soldiery and partisan chiefs of that period, for in such a person they saw a representative manifestation of the Virgin Mary, who in a course of centuries had grown steadily upon the popular heart. As to Joanna's supernatural detection of the Dauphin, Charles VII., amongst 300 lords and knights, I am surprised at the credulity which could ever lend itself to that theatrical juggle. Who admires more than myself the sublime enthusiasm, the rapturous faith in herself, of this pure creature? But I admire not stage artifices, which not La Pucelle, but the court must have arranged, nor can surrender myself a dupe to a conjurer's legerdemain, such as may be seen every day for a shilling. Southey's Joan of Arc was published in 1796. 20 years after, talking with Southey, I was surprised to find him still owning a secret bias in favour of Joan, founded on her detection of the Dauphin. The story, for the benefit of the reader new to the case, was this. La Pucelle was first made known to the Dauphin, and presented to his court at Chinon, and here came her first trial. She was to find out the royal personage among the whole ark of clean and unclean creatures. Failing in this coup d'essai, she would not simply disappoint many a beating heart in the glittering crowd that on different motives yearned for her success, but she would ruin herself, and, as the oracle within had told her, would ruin France. Our own sovereign, Lady Victoria, rehearses annually a trial, not so severe in degree, but the same in kind. She pricks for sheriffs. Joanna pricked for a king. But observe the difference. Our own lady pricks for 2 men out of 3, Joanna for 1 man out of 300. Happy lady of the islands and the Orient! She can go astray in her choice only by 1/2, to the extent of 1/2 she must have the satisfaction of being right. And yet, even with these tight limits to the misery of a boundless discretion, permit me, liege lady, with all loyalty to submit, that now and then you prick, with your pin, the wrong man. But the poor child from Domremy, shrinking under the gaze of a dazzling court, not because dazzling, for in visions she had seen those that were more so, but because some of them wore a scoffing smile on their features, how should she throw her line into so deep a river to angle for a king, where many a gay creature was sporting that masqueraded as kings in dress? Nay, even more than any true king would have done, for in Southey's version of the story, the Dauphin says, by way of trying the Virgin's magnetic sympathy with royalty, "On the throne, I the while mingling with the menial throng, some courtier shall he seated." This usurper is even crowned. "The jewelled crown shines on a menial's head," but really that is un peu fort, and the mob of spectators might raise a scruple whether our friend the jackdaw upon the throne, and the Dauphin himself, were not grazing the shins of treason. For the Dauphin could not lend more than belonged to him. According to the popular notion, he had no crown for himself, but, at most, a petit écu worth 30 pence, consequently none to lend, on any pretence whatever, until the consecrated maid should take him into Rheims. This was the popular notion in France. The same notion as to the indispensableness of a coronation prevails widely in England. But certainly it was the Dauphin's interest to support the popular notion, as he meant to use the services of Joanna. For if he were king already, what was it that she could do for him beyond Orleans? And above all, if he were king without a coronation, and without the oil from the sacred ampulla, what advantage was yet open to him by celerity above his competitor, the English boy? Now was to be a race for a coronation. He that should win that race carried the superstition of France along with him. Trouble us not, lawyer, with your quillets. We are illegal blockheads, so thoroughly without law that we don't know even if we have a right to be blockheads, and our mind is made up, that the first man drawn from the oven of coronation at Rheims is the man that is baked into a king. All others are counterfeits, made of base Indian meal, damaged by sea water. La Pucelle, before she could be allowed to practise as a warrior, was put through her manual and platoon exercise as a juvenile pupil in divinity, before 6 eminent men in wigs. According to Southey, verse 393, Book 3, in the original edition of his Joan of Arc, she, quote, appalled the doctors, unquote. It's not easy to do that, but they had some reason to feel bothered, as that surgeon would assuredly feel bothered who, upon proceeding to dissect a subject, should find the subject retaliating as a dissector upon himself, especially if Joanna ever made the speech to them which occupies verses 354 to 391 of Book 3. It is a double impossibility. First, because a piracy from Tyndall's Christianity as old as the creation, now a piracy a parte post, is common enough, but a piracy a parte ante, and by 3 centuries, would, according to our old English phrase, drive a coach and 6 through any copyright act that man born of woman could frame. Secondly, it is quite contrary to the evidence on Joanna's trial, for Southey's Joan of Arc, Domremy, 1796, Cottle, Bristol, tells the doctors, amongst other secrets, that she never in her life attended, first, Mass, nor, second, the sacramental table, nor, third, confession. Here's a precious windfall for the doctors. They, by snaky tortuosities, had hoped, through the aid of a corkscrew, which every D.D. or S.T.P. is said to carry in his pocket, for the happiness of ultimately extracting from Joanna a few grains of heretical powder or small shot, which might have justified their singeing her a little. And just at such a crisis, expressly to justify their burning her to a cinder, up gallops Joanna with a brigade of guns, unlimbers, and serves them out with heretical grape and deistical round shot, enough to lay a kingdom under interdict. Any miracles to which Joanna might treat the grim D.D.s after that would go to the wrong side of her little account in the clerical books. Joanna would be created a doctor herself, but not of divinity, for in the Joanna page of the ledger the entry would be, quote, Miss Joanna, in account with the Church, doctor, by sundry diabolic miracles, she having publicly preached heresy, shown herself a witch, and even tried hard to corrupt the principles of 6 church pillars, unquote. In the meantime, all this deistical confession of Joanna's, besides being suicidal for the interest of her cause, is opposed to the depositions upon both trials. The very best witness called from first to last deposes that Joanna attended these rites of her church even too often, was taxed with doing so, and, by blushing, owned the charge as a fact, though certainly not as a fault. Joanna was a girl of natural piety, that saw God in forests and hills and fountains, but did not the less seek him in chapels and consecrated oratories. This peasant girl was self-educated through her own natural meditativeness. If the reader turns to that divine passage in Paradise Regained, which Milton has put into the mouth of our Saviour when first entering the wilderness, and musing upon the tendency of those great impulses growing within himself, quote, Oh, what a multitude of thoughts arise!"